Have you ever looked at a great photo and wondered to yourself, why does this look so good and natural? Well, I've edited thousands and thousands of photos for the last years for clients and brands, and the secret almost always comes down to one thing: masking. Truth is, once you know how to use it right, you can get those pro-level results in minutes. So in this video, I'm going to demystify this process and break it down into simple steps, from the basics to the more advanced stuff. Starting with part 1, why masks matter. So the reason that we use masks is because they allow us to do local adjustments. You see, when you're working with Lightroom, you have all of these different sliders. And when we're not using masks, for example, the exposure slider, and we moved up to the right, we are increasing the exposure to the entire image. But with the use of masks, we can choose where we want, for example, the exposure to take place. For instance, if we use a brush tool, we can now brush this area here in the middle, and now we can only change the exposure in the middle, or any other place within the image that you want to do local adjustments. And we use them to shape the light and guide attention. For instance, this photo right here has a ton of masks. You can see this is with it out. Pretty decent photo, but pretty damn flat. With all of these masks that you're seeing up here, I put them on, and we have taken so much control of the light. I can hide all of these so you can see this properly. This is with it off, this is with it on. Just a few sliders and the photo is much more three-dimensional. By the way, I made a free 33-day email series, one short tip a day that will help you become a better photo editor. It's totally free and you can find it in the description down below. All right, part number 2, the masking panel overview. Now up here, you can find the masks. If you click it, you can see all of the masks that you have. Now I'm going to delete all of these masks so we can do this from the beginning and give you a little overview of everything, all right? All right, so once we have deleted the masks, you can see here, we click it, you get this little panel and window up here. Now up here, you have these fast masks that you can see. These are basically AI masks, and with just a click of a button, for instance, the sky, Lightroom will create a mask around the sky. Very, very, very quick and super nice to know about. Underneath that, you have landscape and then you have object. Landscape mask is also AI masks, and if you click it, Lightroom will analyze your image and then it will base mask on what it finds. It's not always perfect, but it has a bunch of different options based off what it finds. Then underneath that, you have objects. I'll show you this a little bit later. Then you have the brush tool, linear gradient, and the radial gradient. These we are going to focus on quite a lot. I'll show that in the next step or next part. And then you have natural range. Now, the way that you select these, for instance, just brush tool, you just click them. Then you get the brush tool, and then you can start to do your changes. And up here in the corner, you can now see that here's the first mask. If you want to create a new mask, you just click the plus sign here, and you can create another mask, gradient filter like this, and now you have that. Now notice I don't see the lines. That's because I clicked H before. If you click H on your keyboard, you will now see these lines here, and you can move this however you want. I'm going to show you in a second what a gradient mask is, but basically now I can do local adjustments to this area right here. And if I want to create a new one, you can click and create a new one. Now a radial filter like this, you can create it here and start to manipulate this however you want. One thing I'm going to show you too, you can collapse this here. You can have it in this view, or you can have it in this view. These are these arrows right here. And you can, if you want to be a 2 super ninja, you can actually rename the mask. You double click it, and this could be middle brightness. If you want to, if you can't write, I'm obviously not that capable of writing brightness. This is if you're working with a ton of masking and you want to quickly see what you're doing, you can do this. I'm often too lazy, so I'm not always bothered, but on bigger images, I might do this. Just wanted to show you, all right? One thing I want to stress here too is that you do not have to use all of the masks that you see here for every photo that you're working with. You just have to figure out what mask will work with whatever that is that you are trying to achieve. If it's just the brush tool that you're going to use, perfect. If it's just a gradient filter, perfect. If you need to use a combination of a few, perfect. But you don't have to go through first subject, then sky, then background, then select people, then select landscape. No need to do that, my friend, all right? So part number 3, the 3 basic masks every photographer should master. This, my friend, is the most basic ones, and I'm of course talking about the brush tool, the linear gradient, and the radial gradient. These are essential, and just because they're the basic one does not mean that they are the worst. They're actually the best, in my opinion. The others are a little bit sugaring on the coat. That is not English, but I think that you understand what I'm trying to say. So let's start with the brush tool. You click it, and the brush tool is basically what it sounds like. It's a brush. Now you're able to click here and you can brush on anything that you like. Now the red thing that you're seeing here on the screen, this is where the mask effect is taking place. If you don't want to see it, you can press O on your keyboard and then you don't see this red thing. I think it's nice because it just shows me where I've made the effect. But basically we can do local adjustments anywhere we want, and then we can take up the exposure or contrast highlight shadows, whatever it is. All these panels here are enabling you to do changes. You can even add a tone curve on just this area right here. Now, one thing that is good to know also is that up here, you can invert this if you want to, and then you can also change the size like this. I like to use the scroller on my mouse to change the size. That's just much faster. And then it's also good to know that you have the feather down here as well. And then you have flow and density. Next up is, of course, the linear gradient filter. This is a mask that I absolutely love, and it looks like this. So what you're looking at here is that you have a gradient mask is strongest down here, and then it gradually becomes less and less and less, the effects you're going to make. For example, if you take the exposure and take it all the way down, you can see that the effect is strongest at the bottom, and then it gradually decreases. And this is so good to understand how to use this. For example, if you want to darken the foreground ever so slightly, now this is obviously too much, this is just for the sake of the tutorial, but let's say we want to darken the foreground ever so slightly, and then we would do it like this, and maybe up the contrast a little bit, and now we got a little bit darker foreground. Super, 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 super nice. A nice little tip to know about here is that you hold in shift on your keyboard while you're dragging. So you take a new one. It makes it straight. You see, now it's totally straight. One thing with the gradient filter is that it sometimes is hard to make it super straight because it is like it wiggles quite a lot. It often goes like this and you end up with not so straight. So if you need a straight one, hold in shift. And I think that concludes the gradient filter. It's quite simple. Now, next up is the radiant gradient filter. And the radiant gradient filter is just a radial filter like this here. And it's a circle. And you have the feather up here, so you can feather this out any way that you like. And then you can add adjustments. So let's say that we want to increase the brightness and open up the shadows in the middle of the photo. We can take the exposure a little bit up. We can take up the shadows ever so slightly and the whites as well, just like so. And you can see here, we're helping to create this photo and make it a little bit more three-dimensional. Very, 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 very nice. And then you can also invert it. So if we were to invert it, now it's the opposite. So now, if you press O, you can see that now the effects are on this side and it's not taking place in the middle. And if we invert it again, it's now in the middle. All right, very, very good to know. So if we were to put this all together, then for this photo, for example, just really quickly, I might make the radial filter like this. Actually, delete this one. This one is not doing anything. The darkening foreground, super nice. We can have that here. And then we can take a brush tool. I do this a little bit. I like to take this a little bit down. I was going to take it like here so we can see what we're doing. I have the brush tool. Where is it? Here. And I just brush it up. This is with the auto mask on. Brush it like so. Sound effects, really, really important. Take down the exposure and boom. With just like 2-3 masks, we made the photo come from this to this, much more three-dimensional and super, super good. All right, so part number 4 is advanced masks every photographer should know of. Now, there was text over this, so you didn't see me do this. Advanced. I say advanced because this is just other types of masks. And as I said, in my opinion, the most important parts are the masks that we showed you or we talked about like earlier. But what I'm talking about here is the, for instance, select people or select landscape and select objects, and also the color range and the luminar range. These are good to know, and I'm going to show you them. So for example, if you're working with a portrait of a people, here is my friend. He's a pretty handsome guy. And if I were to go here and press select people, Lightroom scans him, and then it gives us what person is this. If you have multiple persons, you're going to see multiple persons there. But if you click him, you can see now that we have a ton of different masks that we can choose from, and this is so good. This used to take me so long to create previous, like before all this, but now, for example, if I want to take his, let's say, iris and pupils, we can take that. Now I can just click and we create a mask around this iris and pupils, and I can brighten them, make them a little bit blue, and up the contrast and then the clarity to make them shine. Very, very fast. Want to make his beard? Just click him again. We can take the facial here, and now we can make his beard very, very fierce. Let's see, we can just... You need to have a little bit fun when you're doing this as well, but you get the idea. These two tools are just there to help us speed up our workflow and create masks super, super fast. Click landscape, what it's going to find here? Probably some architecture and natural ground. You see this? Very, very good to know. Now, if you take this photo, for example, and we go select sky, this is also something that is good to know too. You see that it creates a mask around the sky. Now, notice there is no mask that is like foreground. Of course, if you go in landscape mask, you can find natural ground and all that, but a very quick way is to right click on the mask and go to invert. Now it's invert the mask, and now we select the mask just around the foreground, and we can manipulate that locally if we wanted to. And keep that in mind that you can invert any one of these masks by just right clicking on it and go to invert mask. Very, very cool and good to know as well. Now, I'm not going to go into detail in everything like select subject, select background. If you select subject, it's just going to select the subject, what Lightroom thinks is the subject. And all of these select is just, you understand. It selects a mask really, really quickly. Play around with it and figure it out. What I want to go down here is, we can do select object first. Select objects is super cool. You have these modes, a brush tool or like this rectangle tool, and basically it helps you select subject and create a mask around it. It's not always perfect, but it often is quite good, and it speeds up your workflow tremendously. For instance, let's say we want to create a mask around this elk. We can just do it like this, and look, Lightroom creates a mask, and even if it hits the shadows as well. Boom. What did this take? A few seconds? I mean, it's shorter to make this than for you to press the like button on this video. All right, part number 5, bonus masking tools. Here I want to expand a little bit on what I've talked about. We've talked about all of these masks right here, but we haven't touched on color range and luminance range and some other secret tricks that are really good to know. So let's start with the color range and luminance range. When you click one of these, you click get a pen, and now we had color range. So what this pen tool does, it allows us to select and create a sky from a color. So for example, this here is a sunset photo. Let's say I want to increase the colors in the sunset. Then I can just get this pen tool and click on the sunset colors, and boom, Lightroom made a mask around the orange. You can see it up here, the orange color, which is the sunset colors. And you can then refine it if you want to. And then we can start to increase the colors in the sunset. This is obviously too much. I'm just showing you for the sake of the tutorial, but it's super, super, super cool. And you can do this to any color. If you want to isolate the color and you want to create mask around it and do local adjustments to just that color in a very specific way, then you can do that. Good to know. And same with the luminance. The luminance range, the same thing. You get a pen tool, but now we're working with the brightness of each place within the photo. For example, we want to make a mask just affecting the highlights because we want to make this dreamy glow effect. Then we can just take the pen tool, click on the highlights up here, and now it creates a mask just affecting the highlights, and then you can refine it. Up here is the brightest part, and down here is the darkest part, and then you have this tool in the middle, which is the roll off, or like the gradient. So if you want the fall off or roll off to gradually go from the brightnest or the brightest part of the photos to the darkest part, so it's not a clean cut which looks horrible, then you can do that here. So for example, I take this part and move it so it's affecting the highlights, and then here we can roll it off so gradually decreases from the shadows. And now, if we wanted to, we can just take the clarity slider and take it all the way down to make the highlights very, very, very soft and very, very, very dreamy. Take the dehaze maybe down to -1 and then manage texture. Boom, just a few clicks and we made a very beautiful dreamy glow effect. Another thing that I want to show you here in the bonus tip is, of course, that you can add and subtract from any masks that you have. For example, if we were to make, and let's just make this simple, a radiant filter like this. And we can press H so you see what we're doing. All right, this is the radiant filter that we have. Now let's say that I wanted this radial filter to go down, further down like this here. What you can do then is to press here to go to plus, and then you can add whatever it is that you want to add. For example, brush tool. Now we can start to brush and make this mask or further customize this mask any way that you want. And you can also start to subtract. You can subtract another thing, maybe subtract another radial filter down here. Now you're subtracting this. You understand what I'm trying to do. You can further customize your mask by adding and subtracting to them however you want. Also, while we're on the radial filter, which I forgot to mention before, is that when you have this is a mess here. Let's take this away so you can understand what I'm trying to show you. Oops, I deleted the entire photo. Sorry about that. So here, let's do a radiant filter that we had, a radial filter just like so. And let's say that you wanted to expand the radial filter in this direction. All right. But the problem when you do that is that it also expands on the other direction. So take a look, I move it like here and it moves, both sides are moving. If you just wanted to move it in one direction, then you can, one direction, like the band, a super bad joke. I'll see myself out. Then you just take one corner here, hold in Alt or Option on Mac on your keyboard, and then you click and move it just like so. And take a look at this, my friend. One side isn't moving at all, while the other one it does. This, for me, is just better than anything. I love this. This is just such a good little trick. By the way, if you want to learn how to take your good photos and turn them into amazing ones in just 30 days, then check out my Lightroom masterclass. It's basically everything that I've learned about editing thousands and thousands and thousands of photos in Lightroom, both for myself and professionally, breaking down into one simple, easy to follow along course. With other words, everything is laid out in step by step and it's easy to digest. I like it that way. For instance, a student of mine sent me this photo the other day. His was a pretty beginner when it came to Lightroom, but after taking the course, you can now see the incredible difference his editing skills make on this photo. And of course, I'll show you the sliders and what everything does and all that, but more importantly, I will teach you how to think as an editor. So you can just open up a photo and you know what you're gonna do to make your photos stand out. Plus, there is an entire module on color theory, which is incredibly important if you want to take your photos to the next level. At the time of the recording, over 300 photographers are taking this course, and I can guarantee you that you will see massive results to your images in just 30 days. If not, I will give you your money back. Yes, my friend, I'm that confident. All right, part number 6, workflow tips. Now it's time, my friend, to take everything that we talked about, all the masks and all that, and put it into practice. What are we trying to do? The aim with masks often is, of course, local adjustments and to help shape the light. So for example, on this photo right here, we might start with a radiant gradient filter. And what I want to do, I'm looking at this photo and I go like, okay, I want to make it more three-dimensional. So I definitely want to brighten up the middle. And then I would like to shape the light around it a little bit. So with a radiant gradient filter, we can do one like this. And I'm just going to do this quite quickly. This is something that you sit down with a coffee and have a good time and just chill, you know, on a Friday night, because why would you go outside when you can be indoors in the editing game and just edit photos, you know? But we do it like this and take up the exposure and contrast and so. And then we can take a brush tool like this and we maybe brush the areas here to darken them ever so slightly, just tiny, tiny, tiny bit. And notice that one thing that I do is that I'd rather do more mask with subtle changes instead of 1 or 2 or 3 masks with heavy changes, because it allows me to have greater control. So for example, here, I'm manipulating the foreground and I want to darken that a little bit. So I have this mask, and then we can take another mask, a linear gradient filter, and move it up just like so. Take it down like here, and we take down the exposure and I'm darkening the foreground here ever so slightly. So just with these 3 masks, we're taking the photo from this to this. Not bad. I think the middle part is a bit too much. So we're going to take that down, something like this here. And now I'm going to take a radial filter and do something that I call side light. So this light in this scenario, in this image, is coming here. The sun was here somewhere, so it's in this direction. So what I do then, I create a mask just like this. And this is like Arnolfur's secret, the sauce and Arnolfur, that sound I'm just making, that's my name. Yes, yes. In Iceland, we carry pretty brutal names. But we have it here and take down the dehaze like this, just ever so slightly, down with the clarity, down the texture a little bit, and maybe up with the exposure a little bit. So what you can see that this mask is doing, it is emulating the light source that is coming here. I'm just having it ever so slightly here in the same corner that the light is coming from. And then I can take another one, because I'm stacking these masks and doing something that I call mask stacking. And this one is shaped as a cone. And my idea here is to do the same thing as this mask is doing, but I'm gonna shape it and beam the light towards the subject. So here, and this is just the same thing. It's just dehaze, like this, clarity, and down with the clarity. And now, it's just a few masks, we're taking a photo from this to this. If you think this is too much, a very good slider to know of is this one here, the amount. So for example, let's say that we think that the middle part, this here, we did a lot of different changes. We took up the exposure, up the whites, up the shadows, and we think to ourselves, oh, this is just too much. Instead of going down and going, okay, I took it down the exposure a little bit, down the contrast, and not down the shadows, ain't nobody got time for that. Then you can just take the amount slider and you decrease the effects of the entire mask. So take a look, this is 0, and this is with it on. Just like so. Very, very, very good to know. And you can do this to all of the sliders. So all of the masks, sorry. So you can do it like here, just increase it ever so slightly. Then we can create a mask around the sky. So we select the sky. I think it hit here on the subject a little bit. So what we can do then, we can click minus and detect the subject. So we are subtracting detect and subtract the subject from this mask. So take a look when you click on that, it subtracts. So now it is not affecting the lighthouse. You see, this was with it and this was without it with just 2 clicks because we subtracted it. And now, my friend, we can actually take down, up the dehaze a little bit. That gives us a lot of oomph. This is way too much. You should not do it like this. Unless that is like what you're into, then do it. I'm not here to judge, but take down the dehaze a little bit. And then what we can do too is a linear gradient filter from the top, like this here. And here is a creative choice. Either we take it down and we get a moody photo. You see, this would be the effect. This is just like too much, but for the sake of the tutorial. Or we take it up and get more like, I think we're taking it down ever so slightly, just tiny bit. And the key of masks is in the subtle changes, and then you can stack them on top of each other rather than having one super strong mask and it becomes really obvious where it is. And one mistake I see often is a radial filter and it's just too strong, and you go like, bruh, and often not even feathered. It's like not this bad. I think nobody would show it like this, but in this sense, you know, and you go like, I can see that there is a radial filter there. You don't want people to notice this. These are just changes that you're stacking on top of each other, and the aim is to make the photo more three-dimensional and beautiful, and I'm getting way too worked up here. I don't know what's happening in with me, but I just love editing, you know. But just look at the difference. These are a few masks I made while talking to you. I could have been much better, but take a look. This is with the mask on, this is with off. On, off. So much difference. The photo is so much more three-dimensional, and I just like it a lot. And more importantly, my friend, now you know how to master masks. But the thing is, there's actually a whole nother layer of Lightroom magic that most people never discover. But my friend, you're not one of them. You're serious about becoming a better photo editor, so in this video right here, I break down 9 Lightroom secrets the professional won't share.